We're joined now by Koichiro Matsumoto, the Deputy Cabinet Secretary for Public Affairs in the Japanese Prime Minister's office. Mr. Matsumoto, our condolences on the sudden and tragic loss of Mr. Abe today. Your nation is in shock. What are the immediate priorities now for Mr. Fumio Kishida's government in the wake of the former Prime Minister's death?
Yes, thank you very much for your condolences. But before we go into that, we would like to reflect on the legacies of Prime Minister Abe, because he was such a great statesman. He was the longest serving Prime Minister of Japan and one of the most prominent leaders of our time. As you heard from so many leaders around the world, he was very, very much revered by the world leaders for his deep commitment to diplomacy, economy, and national security affairs. Yes, in terms of the priorities that you asked, Prime Minister Kishida made it very clear that he made two instructions. One is that he instructed all the ministries and agencies to do their utmost to conduct a free and fair election. We are in election season, and Mr. Kishida made it very clear that the election must go on, irrespective of this terrible violence. And second, he said there shouldn't be any stagnation of administrative affairs because of this terrible violence. These are the two things that he said.
And Mr. Matsumoto, Mr. Abe was indeed a well-respected man. He had a long and distinguished political career, a friend to Singapore as well. How are cabinet members in Japan reacting to this news?
As you can well imagine, the nation is in shock. I should say another way of saying it is that we are in a state of disbelief. We want to sort of come back from this nightmare, terrible nightmare. If it were a nightmare, we are feeling excruciating pain. And if you have seen Prime Minister Kishida addressing the public, addressing the press, I was able to see that the Prime Minister is in agony. He joined this the Parliament in the same year as Mr. Abe. And they have been very close to each other. And Prime Minister Kishida was foreign minister in Prime Minister Abe's administration for 4 years and 8 months. But as I mentioned very earlier, he was determined not to give in, succumb to the violence, and carry on with the planned election, which is due to take place on Sunday.
Even as the country lives through what you've described, Mr. Matsumoto, as a nightmare, there will no doubt be many questions on how such an incident could have occurred in Japan. It is a largely peaceful country. Gun violence there it's almost unheard of. What will the government explain to the Japanese people about what has happened today?
The police is now investigating the matter, the incident, very, very closely. And we haven't come up with the whole picture of what happened and what the backgrounds are. But yes, you're quite right. Japan is very well known for a very strict gun control. We have a very strict regulations and laws, and acquisition and the possession of guns as such without permit is prohibited, and it's a punishable crime.
Our deepest condolences once again, Mr. Matsumoto. Thank you. Koichiro Matsumoto there, a Deputy Cabinet Secretary in the Japanese Prime Minister's office.